Hi Jim, thank you very much for taking time out of your day today to talk to me. Jim Stokes Workshops Limited and the group has grown to a global company since you created it in the 80s. I'd like to talk about that and how it all began. What was the catalyst that put you on this path before you had the idea of creating JSWL?
My apprenticeship with Geoffrey Marsh at Marsh Plant was quite interesting because I was doing college and night school at the beginning of the week on Monday and Tuesday, and then from Wednesday onwards I was going to work with marque specialists, Great Wall Motors, Aston Martin, people like that. So what actually happened was I was taking the cars, driving them or trading them to wherever they were being worked on, and then Wednesday, Thursday, Friday I would work with the marque specialists on the cars, learning my trade. So as things evolved from there, it was a really great way to actually start learning about these cars. So as it evolved from there on, we started to do more of our own stuff in-house as I got more experience with it. Which was a really great apprenticeship from that point of view. To start off with, Geoffrey used to come with us quite a lot, doing all the trackside stuff, and even Hilary was involved in doing some of that. But towards the end of my time at Geoffrey's, when I was there for 11 years, he didn't come motor racing with us, and I was team managing it. I was running the cars. I had a couple of guys working with me. And we would travel around Europe a little bit, a lot of stuff in the UK, doing race meetings and running the whole scene. So when Geoffrey completely stopped racing and I started my own business, went self-employed, I was already halfway there.
Why did you decide to create your own company and the thought process behind it before you knew that was what you wanted to do?
When I went self-employed, I had really no major aspirations to have a larger business. I'd always worked on my own with only a couple of guys just helping. But as business increased, then it became very obvious quite quickly that although I tried to do everything myself, very soon you realise you can't do everything and you have to put things out to subcontractors. When I started doing that, very quickly I realised that they wouldn't do what I want when I want. And in motorsport, you do need to be able to deliver, and the race meeting won't wait for you. So what I started to do was buy more machinery and employ somebody that was only a few feet from me that I could keep in touch with and make sure they were doing what I want when I want. So basically the company grew out of need and necessity rather than, a big major plan trying to do something like that. And that's the way it's grown, and that's how it's got to the size it is now, by basically needing the people, increasing the company like that, and then controlling it.
What were some of the challenges you faced when JSWL was created, and was there anything that you weren't expecting?
When I first started the company, obviously the financial side of things, cash flow and things like that are not my forte. And it was quite surprising that you start off by thinking, well, that costs £30, then it costs £300, then it costs £3,000, and you think, well, these are big figures coming along here. But that is how you get on with the business, and now you just get used to thousands of pounds in and out, and that's how things move. But I wasn't prepared for that at all, because I'm a hands-on person. I'm not a financial person. I like the mechanical stuff, and that's the side of the company I really enjoy.
And on the opposite side of that, what were some of the unforeseen successes that you had?
It was really interesting fairly early on that we actually got into being involved in doing early Alfa Romeos. That wasn't necessarily something that I went after initially, because I did actually cover a wide spectrum of cars, whether it be Ferraris, Astons, some Jaguars, things like that. But I got brought some early Alfa Romeos to do work on. I love doing them. They are a very favourite marque of mine anyway. But as things expanded, we ended up manufacturing bits and pieces. doing more and more Alfa Romeo parts, and we sort of came into actually the Alfa Romeo side of things almost backwards, because then you start realizing, well, actually we've made enough pieces to build an engine, or we've done stuff like that, but it was never the game plan to do that. It was sort of, it just came out of almost by default. The fact that we were running these cars, we got a reputation for running these cars, making more parts to keep the cars running, and then ultimately people realise that, and when you're manufacturing stuff, you don't make one off, you probably make two or three because it's more economic, and somebody will want one in the future. So that's the way it sort of goes. But that the Alfa Romeo side of things, I love now. It's just one of my favourite cars that we do. The whole Mark thing with Alfas is very special. But we sort of came into it by default.
What was the first race car that came into JSWL, and what were the challenges that car gave you?
Well, we did a 4.5 litre Talbot. That engine was a very early on one that I ended up getting involved with, and I hadn't done any Talbot work before. That was an interesting car. Slightly different engineering to the sort of stuff that we were used to, and also some Aston Martin DBR4 Grand Prix cars, which I'd had experience with before. So I got involved in doing some of those. But at the same time as that, obviously with Jeffrey, I'd been running a Lola T70 and cars like that, and Chevron B8. And I got asked to run those for people, as a private entrepreneur. And that was good fun. I enjoyed doing those because I did see the wide spectrum of cars of that age going right the way back then to the much earlier stuff, which I also really loved. So this was where it was so good that I did see such a large variety of cars with Jeffrey to start off with, and then myself afterwards. And I think people just realised that whatever it was we had, it was quite good. And we managed to make these things work, make them go, be able to repair them. And I love a mechanical challenge, and I've done that since I was 4. Dad built me a shed at the bottom of the garden, and I used to make stuff in that. And it's been one of those things that has always been, in my heart. I love doing engineering. I love solving problems. I love thinking outside the box. And when you're dealing with a lot of different vehicles, then you get thrown all these different curveballs, and I love the challenge of just making them work.
As JSWL grew, it gave you the opportunity to travel to many locations across the world. What are some of the memories that you have that stand out from the places that you have seen?
Doing vehicle support for race meetings, rallies and things like that has been an amazing passport to around the world and doing motorsport in all kinds of different places. But the thing about what I've been doing is I've had a foot in both camps, because during the 80s I mechanicked at Le Mans 7 times, and we raced a lot of endurance races around the world doing cars like that, going to Japan and those sort of things. So I was running and being massively involved in running current race cars, and then I would come home from a race meeting in Japan, for instance, and go back and start working on a car that was built in 1932. So from that point of view, it was brilliant. But going to the places like going to Mexico, doing the Carrera Panamericana, 2,000 miles through Mexico, and the countryside is phenomenal. Seeing things like that, and going around the world, to be honest. But the only big problem with that is with the more modern stuff is if the airport, the hotel and the circuit's on the same piece of road, that's all you see. Mexico's a bit different, where you're driving through the countryside, seeing air plants and all kinds of insects, and it's wonderful, all sort of rolled into one big experience.
You have seen many different vehicles come into JSWL and the group. What would you say, in your opinion, was the most interesting car you've seen?
Right. The question of which car has been probably one of the most interesting ones has to really be the 158, because that is a car that to do it in the first place, because it's the only one in private hands originally, and be offered to do that, and sitting in the boardroom at Alfa Romeo in Portello when the deal was done to actually acquire the car for Mike Sparkin, and to be asked to inspect the car before we got it back to the UK for us to rebuild was an experience that, takes a bit of beating. And when we'd finished the car, going to Monza to race it the first time or to run it the first time, and then going to Clermont-Ferrand the following weekend, and having lunch with Fangio and his brother. Those are things that you pinch yourself. You don't think that you'd ever be able to do anything like that. So the 158 has been an absolutely amazing car to be involved with. To be able to build a second car from about 70% original parts that came from Portello in 1990 was the icing on the cake, because I never thought we would ever deal with a second one. But to be able to do a second one and have it out there is fairly phenomenal, to the point, it's racing this weekend.
Your mustache is one of your most recognisable features. What can you tell us about it when you grew it in the early 80s?
My moustache, yeah, people do recognise me because of it. My dad used to have a moustache. It was basically 1981 where I decided that I actually quite like the idea of growing moustache. You've got a moustache, the same.
Yeah.
But it's just one of those things, and people recognise me for it, and it's been manicured at the moment. It does get a bit out of hand, but it's part of me, and I would never change it now. I would never shave it off. It's just part of how I am, and when I've got a flat cap and I do look like an old bugger driving a car, which is true.
English weather is renowned for being unsettled, and in 1987 the UK was hit by a hurricane which caused a tree to fall into the workshop. What were your initial thoughts when you saw what had happened, and how did you recover from it?
Yeah, the storm in '87 was a leveller on more than one level, really, because we had a 120-foot lime tree go right through the workshop from one end to the other, to the point where it pushed the roof in and the walls fell out. And when the walls fell out, the racking that had all the 158 Alfa parts on went with it. So we ended up with brick rubble and Alfa Romeo parts spread all around the workshop, the outside of the workshop, when the ceiling came down. It destroyed my machinery. The chassis was not touched, but the tree was right across the top of it, and we had a P3 crankcase which was pinned to the ground by the studs in the end of it. And when the crane driver took the tree off it, he said, "Oh, that bit weighed 10 tons." We did lose a couple of cam covers off a 2900 Alfa, but we were incredibly lucky that we didn't have more damage. But it was devastating, the damage that had been done to it. But Hillary helped and got some sheds organised. We managed to get regrouped fairly quickly. We did have a bit of a problem because there was another tree next to the one that had fallen, and the owner of that, because the tree wasn't in my ground, decided that he was going to try and cut that down in a very haphazard way, and we could see that we could have another tree coming down through the sheds that we had just put all the stuff in. We even had the police involved over that one. But it was devastating to start off with, but we did regroup fairly quickly within only a couple of weeks, and we were back busy building a 158, in a shed.
Since the hurricane, the JSWI group has continuously grown. Where do you see it in the future?
The JSW group now is basically 5 separate companies, or 4 companies and a holding company. And the way we've done it is, as the company got larger, we broke it up to make it into individual cost centres. So Triple M, the machine shop, is a cost centre, as is JSW, as is South Shore, the body shop, and also our classics division. That way, by doing it like that, it means that the company, then we can keep an eye on each individual part of it, all under the holdings banner. I don't have any real aspirations to make the company any bigger. You know, we've got mid-50s numbers of staff at the moment. That is enough. We are fine-tuning the company. We are refining what we're doing. There are a few more nice pieces of machinery I wouldn't mind. But all in all, I think the way the market is and how everything is, I think we are in a comfortable position, and I don't envisage making it any larger. We have five factory units here in Waterlooville. That is enough of an overhead to worry about as it stands now, but we can function very well within those without getting any larger. So I just think that we will refine what we're doing, and I think we are in a very nice place within the industry.
Just want to say thank you very much. It's been an amazing conversation. And
thank you, Bob, for the chat.
yeah, hope you do it again soon.
You got it.